In this talk segment, we're going to get into my favorite of all the post-nuclear survivor movies, The World, the Flesh, and the Devil, which is from 1959 and directed by Ronald McDougall. Now, we're occasionally getting emails from people inquiring whether I use index cards or notes. And the answer is no. I do not use index cards or notes while I'm doing the show. I try to do it all off the top of my head, which means I occasionally make a boo-boo. I sometimes may make mistakes. So, if any of you out there want to contact me, don't be afraid. Let me know when I've said or done something wrong, because I learned from that. All right, let's get to The World, the Flesh, and the Devil. Now, this movie is similar to Arch Obler's seminal film 5. A tiny group of survivors in a nuclear disaster ravaged New York City. The film encapsulates the post-atomic war survivor mythos with racial problems and, lots of sexual tension. It's an evocative film for its day. The main character, played by Harry Belafonte, known as Ralph Burton, I believe, is an African-American, a coal miner inspector who is trapped in a cave-in for 5 days. He hears rescuers digging, trying to get to him. They start to slow down and then cease operations. Now, Ralph, Harry Belafonte, digs his way out and manages to reach the surface. He has unknowingly been protected from the destruction of civilization by atomic war because he's been trapped in the mine. He finds a deserted and desolate world. He's in Pennsylvania. Everyone seems to have disappeared, and there's no bodies or skeletons that are actually seen in the movie. Like the movie 5, newspapers provide the explanation. We see the headline. The United Nations retaliates for use of atomic poison. Millions flee from cities. It's the end of the world. He sees 3 newspapers that clue him in as to what's been happening while he's been trapped deep in the mine. Essentially, a special radioactive isotope salt has disintegrated all human but not animal life. A dust cloud has spread all over the globe that was lethal for 5 days. The same amount of time Ralph was trapped inside the mine. Ralph decides to travel to New York City and search for other survivors. Now, the scenes of Belafonte wandering the desolate streets of Manhattan are very effective and very well photographed. They actually filmed them in New York City at 5 in the morning. Ralph enjoys the bounty of the destroyed Big Apple. He gathers canned food. He connects a portable generator. He moves into a Park Avenue penthouse. But loneliness is difficult to deal with, so he gets a few mannequins to keep himself company, to help keep himself sane. He talks to them, he sings to them, and he spends time saving the remnants of civilization. He grabs books, he grabs paintings, he grabs sculptures. He takes his pick of artworks from the best museums in town, and he brings them to his penthouse apartment. Now, soon Ralph encounters another survivor, Sarah Crandall, played by the lovely Inger Stevens. Now, when I was growing up, I had a thing for Inger Stevens. She was actually the farmer's daughter on television, but she was also on The Twilight Zone 4 times. She's always playing a rather attractive but psychologically wounded young woman. Well, in this movie, she's a somewhat neurotic young white woman in her early 20s. Remember, Ralph is an African American. Sarah has been watching Ralph for weeks, hiding in the shadows. She's been too fearful to approach Ralph and make contact. Now, Sarah was sheltered from the radioactive isotope dust cloud, by a decompression chamber. She joins Ralph, and they become friends. Now, the racial element emerges, but is not really an issue at first. Sarah wants and needs sex and love. She needs to get laid. She slowly develops emotional feelings for Ralph, and makes it clear that she has a sexual interest in him. As far as they know, they're the last two people alive on the planet. Now, Ralph kind of holds himself. He keeps back. He won't take that initial step towards sexual contact. The inhibitions of a racist society still exist in the post-nuclear apocalyptic world. And Ralph Belafonte takes a step back. He will not enter a sexual relationship with Sarah. Ralph keeps himself busy. He broadcasts every day from a radio station, hoping to make contact with other survivors. Eventually, he receives an answer. There's a weak signal from Europe, coming from Paris, and a few other people have managed to survive. Now, complications arise when a white man, Benson Thacker, played by Mel Ferrer, arrives by boat. He's been traveling up and down the northeastern coast, seeking people. He's very, very sick. He's ill. And Ralph and Sarah nurse him back to health. Ralph, as I mentioned, has conflicting emotions. He loves Sarah, but cannot forget the racial element, and decides to push Benson and Sarah together. Benson is attracted to Sarah and sets his sights on the woman. Sarah likes Benson, but has deeper feelings for Ralph. And she's willing to remain with Ralph. But she realizes that Ralph has given Benson the opportunity to move in and begin a sexual relationship with Sarah. The sexual conflict slowly begins to disintegrate the friendships. Ralph, in a way, is now alone again, more alone than ever. He cannot find it within himself to leave New York City. He is in love with Sarah, but feels that because he's black and she's white, he has little chance with her. Little chance for a relationship, a sexual relationship with her. And he hesitates, despite his deep feelings for her. Now, Benson, the third arrival in the picture here, sees Ralph as a rival and a problem. His presence is keeping Sarah from connecting with him sexually. Ralph is always around, even when he's not. Ralph is always on Sarah's mind, especially when he goes on extended visits to the libraries and museums on his salvage expeditions. Benson essentially becomes crazed with sexual frustrations and warns Ralph that the next time they meet, he's going to kill him unless he leaves New York City. There's a lethal contest in the ending of the film, a shooting match between the two men. They hunt each other down with guns through the empty streets of New York City. The victor of this contest will get the only surviving woman. Ralph, during this chase through the streets of New York, passes the United Nations building and goes through the Ralph Bunche Park. He reads the inscription They shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, and shall not learn war anymore. This is, of course, a quote from the Bible. Isaiah, the book of Isaiah, chapter 2, verse 4, I believe. Ralph is deeply moved by the words and throws down his rifle and goes unarmed and unafraid to meet Ben. Ben is unable to kill his rival for Sarah's affections. Ben throws down his gun and starts to walk away. Sarah suddenly appears. Ralph turns to leave her. She takes Ralph's hand. Sarah then calls Benson, and gives him her other hand. They all realize the futility of it all. And the film ends with the three of them walking off together down the empty streets towards a new future. The old pre-atomic Holocaust world was Philistine and racist. In the new world, Sarah will love both men in a mixed race menage a trois or triad. Now, this is a rather daring conclusion for the time. The script for The World, the Flesh, and the Devil was based on a 1901 novel, The Purple Cloud, by M.P. Scheel. And it's far more sophisticated than the plot suggests. The treatment of the racial themes is at times tentative, but is somewhat compromised by the use of Belafonte, who also produced. Belafonte is a very handsome man and light-skinned. Belafonte is essentially a good-looking white man dipped in caramel. So the wrangle over the racial prejudice and discrimination, the effect is somewhat limited. Now, this movie, the mixed race menage a trois conclusion, was too much for Southern audiences. The film was pulled from distribution by MGM in many of the big Southern cities. The movie was also condemned by various church groups, including the Catholic Legion of Decency, and it lost money at the box office. Now, there was an unofficial remake of The World, the Flesh, and the Devil, which was made in New Zealand in 1988, called The Quiet Earth, which is an actually pretty good and interesting movie. I recommend it. All right, with that thought, we're going to take another musical break. When we return, we're going to examine the effects of radioactive fallout and the atomic war on the future of mankind via time travel movies. This, of course, was a way to ponder the consequences of nuclear war and the possibilities for survival of the human race. But first, some more music. This is Hawkwind with a song from their Quark, Strangest, and Charm album called Damnation Alley. Stay with us. This is God Rock.